continent in the ombudsman space. As you may be aware, I'm currently the first vice president of African Ombudsmen and Mediators Association, which is a continental body of public protector-like institutions. And IOMA is affiliated to AU and has observer status at the AU meetings. I'm the board chairperson of the African Ombudsman Research Center, which is based at the University of KZN. And this research institution support other ombudsmen in Africa with research, information sharing, capacity building, and advocacy. So the center was launched in 2011 by the former President Jacob Zuma and has been operating on the basis of financial support from the Department of International Relations and Corporations, especially the African Renaissance Fund. So this process contributes to Agenda 2063 of the AU, where we would want to see the Africa we want. And there are 7 aspirations where we contribute critically to good governance, democracy, respect of human rights, including justice and the rule of law, and also contributing to peace and stability, because a lot of ombudsmen are also mediators, so they mediate in their spaces so that we can deal or be preventative in issues of instability. So while this is happening, we thank DERCO for the generosity, and they also thank the South African government for providing this financial support. And unfortunately, currently, we're still also engaging with DERCO on making sure that they fund the center further. So past 2017-18 in a glance, we've received a total budget of 301,831,000, and our capacity, staff capacity is 389 posts, but we have 361 filled. The cases we've handled is 18,000, and the carried over from the previous financial year was 5,000, and new cases received during this financial year is 11,000. Cases we've referred where we don't have jurisdiction and advised, because we do spend time to advise complainants, is 1,002. Cases we've referred to other institutions is 1,700, and the cases we finalized, as I indicated earlier, is 13,000. So the cases which we carried over this financial year is for the 2018-19 will be 4,003, and 815 outreach which were conducted. So this shows the cases which we've upheld meaning we've resolved the complaints, and then not upheld, it means we don't have, the office does not confirm the allegations by the complainant, and no conclusion drawn, it's where we don't have jurisdiction. A number of complainants to the office is still highest, males is 65%, and females 31%, and the question will be asked, the 4%, why not specified? Some of them is anonymous complainants, or some of them, when they complete the form, they have not indicated their gender. So I'll hand over to the CEO, chairperson, to take over the presentation.
Thanks, PP, and good morning, members. Mine is the highlights on the performance report for the year 2017-2018. There were targets or strategic objectives that were set by the organization. I'll start with target 1, which we basically said that there will be 100% of new cases received from the 1st of April 2017 should be investigated and finalized in accordance with the revised standard of the organization. The actual achievement was that 79% of that target was achieved. Then the next target is a 10% decline in turnaround times for investigation received and finalized in the past year. Basically, this is to minimize the turnaround time in dealing with the cases. There was a 46% decline in turnaround times for the investigations received and finalized in the past financial year. Whereas the next target is the conduct and finalize all existing systematic investigations, stroke interventions for the past financial year. Unfortunately, there were 17 existing systematic interventions and only 6 out of the 17 were finalized by the year end of March 2018. We also set a target to say that there will be 10 dialogues held with organs of state on systematic challenges by the end of the financial year. We managed to do more than 10, which show 11 dialogues were held with the organs of the state on systematic challenges by the end of the financial year. Going to the next target, we also said that there will be 100% follow-up of remedial action matters, which means that every time the public protector has issued the remedial action, we take step proactively follow up to say what has happened to that. There were about 74 of the remedial action matters, and all of the 74 were followed up. Then the next target is 100% development and implementation of a policy to deal with the non-implementation of the remedial action. Basically, this talks to the policy that governs those that we have issued remedial action against. A policy on the follow-up of the non-implementation of the remedial action was approved and implemented, which means that we achieved this specific target. The next target we set, because the office, as part of the constitutional requirement, is that the office must be accessible. Therefore, we said that we will conduct 84 clinics per province by the end of the last financial year. We successfully did that. A total of 815 outreach clinics were conducted. Unfortunately, in one province, Mpumalanga, due to some reasons, they couldn't achieve that target. But overall, the organization managed to avail itself to the public. The next target talks to human resource issues. We set a target to say 150 employees trained through the implementation of the systematic human resource development program by the last financial year. Above 150 employees were trained, 196 employees were trained through the implementation of the system of the human resource development program. The next one is that 10 awareness activities on the institutional values and customer service charter conducted as the end of March 2018, and then all those awareness activities were conducted. The next one is that 100% completion and approval of the institution's conditions of service, including a remuneration framework by 31st of March 2018. Unfortunately, this one was not achieved because of the consultation in the bargaining forum, but it's something that we're fast-tracking so that we can have stability in this area. 100% implementation of video conferencing. These are logistics to support the organization. Unfortunately, again, because of the cost-cutting measures and the fact that we are really struggling financially, as we will see in the next presentation by the CFO, we couldn't implement this target. Just like all the organization, we have to conduct threat and risk analysis in all our offices every year. We did that. Unfortunately, we couldn't do through everywhere where we have a footprint, again, due to the lack of funds. But from time to time, we send our chief security officer to review the situation in our offices. The next one is the sustained and unqualified audit opinion with no material misstatements. The institution achieved an unqualified audit opinion. However, with the material misstatement, we'll talk more about that when we get to the finances and the Auditor General's report. The next one is the target was to enter into at least one bilateral agreement with an ombudsman institution by the end of the financial year. That was done. We did enter into a bilateral with the health ombudsman by the 31st of March 2018. I will end here and give it to the Chief Financial Officer who will present the finances. With your permission, Chair.
Thank you, CEO. Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. In terms of our financial report, just a highlight on the financial performance of the institution. We have accumulated a deficit over the few years, wherein our liabilities exceed our assets, as highlighted in the Auditor General's report. This is partly attributable to insufficient funding for the institution to fulfill its mandate in line with Section 181 of the Constitution. And also the demand for the PPSA services over the years has increased due to our publicity and accessibility. Yet the budget allocation has been reduced in line with the current economic challenges within the country. In terms of our summary of our statement of financial performance, we had a deficit of 18.6 million in 2016-17 and 17.9 million in 2017-18. In total, our accumulated deficit is 29.5 million. However, this has been the case since 2008-2009. That is when we started to experience deficit in our financials. The next slide highlights the commitments and liabilities that we had as at the end of the financial year 17-18. We have a total liabilities of 59.2 million and commitments amounting to 32.6 million, and together our liabilities and commitments make up 92.5 million. In terms of our revenue and expenditure, we had a total revenue of 327 million. That revenue includes budget that has been allocated by the National Treasury, as well as interest that we've earned in the bank, as well as the service in kind that we receive through public works. In terms of our expenditure, the total is 345 million, and the variance which talks to the deficit is 17.9 million. A highlight on the Auditor General's report, as it is in the annual report. One of the matters that the Auditor General has raised is material uncertainty relating to going concern for the institution, considering that we have accumulated deficit and our current assets are less than our liabilities. And the causes for that is, as explained earlier, reduction of our operational budget over the 2017 MTF versus the demand of our services over the years. Interventions that we have implemented as an institution is cost-cutting measures, which includes termination of acting allowances for unfunded positions, and we've also had to terminate some contracts with fleet management companies. But as we continue, you will see more on the cost-contained measures that we have implemented. However, National Treasury has been also approached in request for additional funding to assist us over and above these cost containment measures. The next item is we had a target to achieve 10% of turnaround times decline, as the CEO was presenting earlier. However, during audit, it was realized that we were at 46%. And the reason why we had that, or the cause, is that there was poor quality assurance process which led to errors in the information provided for audit purposes. Interventions that we have implemented is consequence management is underway to hold the officials responsible, accountable for that. And then in the 18-19 financial year, rigorous quality control measures have been introduced to avoid recurrence in our data quality. The next slide talks to achievement of 100% of new cases finalized, where we had an achievement of 79%. AG is saying that the information that we provided did not agree to what we reported. And the same cause is the poor quality assurance processes, which led to errors. The interventions are the same, consequence management, and also stricter control measures have been introduced in the current financial year to avoid recurrence. The other issue that the Auditor General raised is effective and appropriate steps were not taken to prevent irregular expenditure amounting to 19.9 million as disclosed in note number 26 of our financial statements. The causes there is that we had deviations that were not approved by the relevant authority, wherein National Treasury had the jurisdiction to approve those deviations. However, they were approved internally. We also had contracts that were extended beyond permissible value. We had services exceeding the threshold of 500,000. which had been procured through a quotation system, but when the bill that were received were above the estimated amount, as well as scope extensions without approval. Interventions is that consequence management is currently underway, and also senior manager of supply chain has been appointed to ensure that compliance is met by the institution on procurement. I must, however, highlight to say that in the 19.9 million of the irregular expenditure, about $1 million of that relates to the 17-18 financial year. The rest of the transactions are coming from previous years. However, they were discovered and reported in the 17-18 financial year. In the next slide, the Auditor General indicated to say effective steps were not taken to prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure amounting to 1.4 million as disclosed on note number 25 of the AFS. The causes there is that we had labor relations matters, we had penalty interest with the South African Revenue Services in relation to UIF. We also had vehicle accidents and travel booking cancellations. Interventions are similar. Affected officials have been afforded an opportunity to respond to the matters. Human Resources is currently reviewing those responses, and consequence management will be applicable. We also had some payments that were not made within 30 days as per the requirement in terms of the Treasury regulations. The causes thereof is that there was lack of leadership for compliance and monitoring due to key positions within the finance unit being vacant. The interventions implemented is that processes have now been streamlined, and monitoring of the compliance has been effected since September 2018, and there are senior positions that have been filled within the finance unit to ensure compliance in this aspect. The financial statements submitted for auditing were not prepared in accordance with the prescribed financial reporting as required by Section 41B of the PFMA. Material misstatements were identified during the audit. However, they were corrected, resulting in the institution receiving an unqualified audit opinion. The causes are that management did not exercise oversight responsibility, as there were numerous misstatements in the financial statements. Key positions within the finance unit were vacant during the period of the compilation of the financial statements, which includes the CFO and the manager for finance, who left at the end of March 2018. Interventions are that the CFO post has been filled effective July 2018. The manager and the senior manager positions are being prioritized for filling at the moment. The next slide talks to our MTF process, just to highlight our current financial status in terms of budget allocation. We had 2018 MTF baseline reduction implemented by the National Treasury, which affected the institution by 9 million rands in 2018-2019 financial year, which is the financial year that we are in. The program on administration has been affected by a total of 5.1 million. Investigation, which is core business, has been affected by 3.1 million, and complaints and stakeholder management is affected by 865. As you can see, that we had to cut from some of the essential services in order to be able to be within the budget allocation and accommodate the cuts implemented by the by the National Treasury. In the next financial year, administration budget will be cut or has already been cut by 6.2 million, investigation by 3.5 million, and complaints and stakeholder management by 900,000. And the total reduction in the budget for the next financial year is 10 million. So we had to reprioritize and see how we can absorb these budget cuts that the National Treasury has implemented, not only in PPSA, but across all departments. The next slide talks to further baseline reduction that the National Treasury has communicated recently. In 1920 financial year, there will be 1.6 baseline cut. In 2021, there will be 1.5 baseline cut. And in 21-22, there will be 1.4 baseline cut, which will affect PPSA by 5.1 million in the first year, and 5.1 million in the second year, and 5 million in the third year. The total reduction or further reduction will be 15.2 million. The cost efficiency measures that we have implemented since 2017 are as follows. We have cancelled paying relocation of costs for newly appointed staff, which is the payment of once-off basic salary. We only pay for the relocation of personal belongings and 1 month's accommodation if we have to appoint a person that is coming from far away. And then our posts that are level 12 and below, we advertise them internally so that we avoid to have to pay for media costs. We have reduced our catering expenses. We are no longer awarding bursaries to staff. We only are committing to those that we've already contracted with until they finish their studies. Additional cost-cutting measures that we implemented in the current year is that we have reduced our traveling budget from 6.4 million to 3.2 million, which is half. We are further decreasing that by to 2.7 million in the next financial year. We had to terminate our fleet management lease. We only now hire car on ad hoc basis whenever there is a need, so we don't have pool cars that we keep for whenever traveling needs to happen. We've also cut down on stationary expenses. We've also scaled down on expenditure in relation to training and development, although it is a legislative requirement that 1.5% of our compensation of employees' budget should be for training. However, we are unable to afford that at this point. We further requested additional funding to the National Treasury, and this is what we presented to them. Over the 3-year period, we require 153.9 million, of which 75 million is funding of additional personnel, including establishment of an internal audit unit, because currently we've outsourced the internal audit function. We also need a case management system. The implementation thereof will cost about 15 million. However, maintenance and support may cost us R1 million per month, and in total, per year, and in total over the 3 years, it will cost us 17 million. Professional fees, a total of 41.7 million over the 3-year period. Improvement of security will cost us 19.4 million over the 3-year period. In the 19 of our offices, 18 of them do not have security services, and this is a threat and a risk to our officials and also to our clients. And maybe just reasons why we require the additional funding is that we had 32 posts that were vacated in the 17-18 financial year, but we could not fill those positions due to budgetary constraints. However, those positions are critical because they relate to investigators, which are our core business. The case management system, as we've already indicated earlier, we are at the risk of data integrity. Hence, we had those findings where our data was found not to be according to what we reported, and we believe that with the case management system, we will be able to have better quality in terms of our information and reports. Professional fees, we have a need or a demand for subject matter expert when executing complex investigation that requires specialized skills in certain areas, which includes actuaries, procurement experts, forensic specialists, built construction environment, and ICT specialists. We also require fees for legal services at some point. And then in terms of security services, I've indicated to say 18 of our offices currently do not have security services, and there has been incidences of break-ins and robberies where our staff have been affected. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. That's all. DPP, do you want to add?
And your team for presenting within 33 minutes, whereas we have allocated yourselves an hour, so we still have additional 27 minutes, which I will add to members for engagement with the PPSA. Honorable members, over to you. Honorable Breitenbach will be the first. Honorable Horn. Let's keep our cell on silence, please. Honorable Maila will be the third. Honorable Swart, the fourth. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I see that Mr. Malunga is here this morning. Hello, Mr. Malunga. Nice to see you. I'm just wondering if there's been some change in the status of Mr. Malunga's security clearance, since in prior meetings we were told that he couldn't be used optimally in the office because of his security clearance and was relegated to some sort of training position, and now he's here today. So hopefully that matter has been resolved and now he can fully occupy the position that he should be occupying. So I'd like to hear about that, please. And then, of course, there are serious concerns about the finances at the Office of the Public Protector. You yourself say there were material misstatements due to a paucity of staff. That's deeply concerning, and I'd like to know why suitably capable people were not acting in those positions to prevent this kind of thing happening. The office is factually insolvent again this financial year, despite the assistance of over 15 million from the Department of Justice. We still have an accumulated deficit of 30 million. You came to office making sweeping claims, casting aspersions on the management style of your predecessor, and said that you would be a new broom sweeping clean. Well, swept you have. The office is in a much worse position than ever before. You're factually bankrupt with no workable plan, and a lot of the competent and experienced staff have left. I'd like you to discuss that issue, please. Large sums of money have been spent on what can most politely be described as questionable litigation. And the Auditor General has concerns about your office as a going concern. So if you could allay fears in that regard, and if you could just also cover whether your shunning of external funding has contributed to this financial, what can only be described as a bit of a mess. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Acting Chair. I would like to, first of all, inquire in a bit more detail regarding I think what the Honourable Buitenbach also referred to, let's say, the continuous and constant vacancies on senior management level. So last year we were informed that the then CFO was relieved from his post due to what the Public Protector called consequence management, which ordinarily, obviously, would be something that this committee must be welcomed, because wherever we do oversight, we demand consequence management. But now in this year's annual report, we see that there ultimately was a payout of just under R1 million to the then CFO. Now, unless I understand consequence management completely differently from the Public Protector, I would think that if consequence management leads to a finding of misconduct and termination of employment, there would obviously no need to pay any severance package. So that, I think, needs an explanation. And then in respect of the then CEO last year, also once again picking up of what we were informed then, we were informed that the matter of the CEO was what was called sub judice, because there was an issue with his previous employer, the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, and that we would in due time be apprised of what transpired there. So if we could be informed as to what ultimately happened, that would be very welcome. Then, Madam Acting Chair, I think part of what, and we will look into the, later on into the AG's finding about the usefulness or reliability in respect of case management, but going back to 2016, we were informed by the Public Protector that a new case management system was to be developed or rolled out. Then later on, funding was an issue. Then still later on, we were informed that state security with their specific apparent alleged expertise in this regard was assisting, but yet in this annual report we are once again informed that all of this has been put on ice. And I think it is part of a vicious cycle, because if we look into one of the repeat findings, it talks to both two indicators: the percentage of cases investigated and finalized in accordance with the approved service standards, and the percentage of decline in turnaround times for investigations, where the AG, if one has to use the diplomatic terms the AG uses, talks about the unreliability about the information contained in the annual report. But the reality is, given the fact that this is a repeat finding, one also gets the sense that there was a fundamental disagreement between the AG and the Office of the Public Protector. And what it really boils down to is the AG saying that there is just no room for any argument that the figures contained in the annual report could be correct. Then, in terms of supply chain management, once again, a repeat finding where certain contracts were extended or amended without a properly authorized official signing off on it. I think we need to be appraised on if it was not the properly authorized official, one's thinking of the CFO and the CEO, then who in fact signed off on the extension and or the amendments of those contracts. And then also, we sit with a growth in irregular expenditure. And last year, I had a look at the minutes of this very meeting of last year. Last year, we were informed that we should not blame this public protector as the accounting officer for the then growth in irregular expenditure, because according to her, much of what was ultimately deemed to be irregular expenditure then by the AG was expenditure incurred by the predecessor just before Advocate Madonsela left office. So if we were then not to blame her last year for the growth in irregular expenditure, what's the explanation this year? Because there must be no doubt, Madam Acting Chair, that all of this must be of a big worry to us on two levels. The one is that this Office of the Public Protector, in terms of the mandate the Public Protector referred to at the beginning of her presentation, is seized with dealing with maladministration in spheres of government and other governmental public institutions. But then yet, if you look at the obvious definition of maladministration, which talks to inefficient or dishonest administration, a lack of care or judgment, or even a lack of honesty. All of this must ultimately have the ripple effect that the public will lose confidence in this office, and the trust of the public in this office to effectively deal with maladministration elsewhere will be eroded if it is known that this office cannot properly look after its own books. So last year we heard of an audit action plan, but yet, to conclude, more or less everything in terms of the findings made by the Auditor General was repeat findings, and there was an acceleration in respect of these issues. And then to conclude the issue of the consultants, one of the things the Public Protector, when she took office, was quite firm on was that she will going forward not be making use of consultants. Yet the cost in respect of consultants grew from 1.5 million in 2016 to 13 million in 2017 and to 24 million in 2018. And I think we as a committee, if they're not able to give it today, must ask for a accurate breakdown in respect of the costs of consultants, because it would seem that it's just also something that's snowballing from year to year. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. And maybe let me welcome the presentation by the Public Protector. PP, in your presentation, there is indication that you are making follow-ups on compliance to remedial action. Now, what I would like to know is, in your follow-ups, what did you find? Were the remedial actions complied with, or are there still institutions that are not ready to comply with those remedial actions? If they are, what is being done? No, given the nature of your work, I think the committee acknowledges that you received an unqualified audit, but we can only be happy if you have a clean audit. And we would like to know what you have in store to make it a point that you receive a clean audit. Where we are now, there is a commission on state capture which is busy with its work. And I'm made to believe that there are cases which might have been referred to your good office which relate to state capture. What is happening at this point? Are you referring some of those cases to the commission? Is there any relationship between your office and the commission, so that maybe we prevent that would there be parallel processes regarding similar issues? PP, at the time when you resumed office, you promised that you will strive to make our people their own liberators. I would like to know how much you are doing in that line. It's a very broad statement, but obviously there might be work. There might be work which is being done to ensure that that is realized. Can you just take the committee on board as to what is being done, how far are you, and how do you view your progress towards that journey? Chair, thanks very much. Those were my issues.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I think we have over the years indicated our sympathy for the financial position that the Public Protector finds herself in the office, particularly in view of the increase in number of review cases. The committee has expressed its concerns on some of those cases, and there's an ongoing issue around that issue. I just wanted to know, the annual report refers to the awaiting of a bill of costs on the one court case, where the Public Protector was ordered to pay those personal costs. Has that been received yet? Because that was up to the end of February. I'm not talking about the cost, the case that is still subject to appeal in the Constitutional Court that will be heard on in November. Then I do understand that you've got an unqualified audit, but there are going concern problems, and that was highlighted by the CFO. Obviously, you have requested additional funds every year. We have supported that. It hasn't been forthcoming except for the 15 million. But again, as my colleagues indicated, the issue relates to if you have a mandate of looking into maladministration, then it is, I can understand the going concern issues for lack of funding, but when it comes to your procurement and contract management, then surely it's incumbent upon the auditor, upon the Public Protector to make sure that there is full compliance with all the conditions in the PFMA. And that's why the findings of the Auditor General, as set out in their notes, and you referred to that in your slides as well, in notes 26, 27, 28, are of great concern. The effective and appropriate steps to prevent irregular expenditure. It's not big figures, but, well, comparatively speaking, I mean, public enterprises yesterday, 27 billion rand, which is astronomical. But it's just the principle of the matter. Here, as required by Section 38, 1C2 of the PFMA and Treasury regulations. Now, I think it's very important for us to get further details, and we do understand that there has been consequence management instituted to prevent that going forward. But when it's straightforward deviations where approval has not been obtained, then it is a matter of great concern. That doesn't relate to additional funding, unless you could argue that because there wasn't additional funding, you were not able to fill posts, and therefore that occurred. But I think we need to be apprised as to whether your consequence management will be sufficient to eradicate these concerns and these issues that the Auditor General has highlighted, particularly given your standing in society and the work that is required in terms of your mandate to investigate any conduct or improper or resulting in improper prejudice, basically maladministration. So I think that is an issue that must be prioritized and highlighted by us as a committee. Then I wanted to just ask, an issue that was raised before was a possible amendment to the Public Protector Act. Has there been any further move in that regard where you have discussed these issues, where there is any progress on that, where an amendment bill, and what exactly is thought? This was an issue that was highlighted in a previous report. I'd also like to obtain information whether the Governance Advisory Board, has that been made use of? That was 3 external members that would give advice to the Public Protector, whether that was made use of at all. And again, we appreciate the issues of the cost containment measures that have been instituted. And I notice from your presentation that already there are further costs reductions in the present medium-term budget that will be announced on the 24th of October going forward. 1.6%, 1.5%, 1.4%. And this has tremendous implications and for the Public Protector's Office in doing its work. And obviously, we from our side would like to support you, but then you have to make sure that these issues that are highlighted are dealt with. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, and I think it follows up on what Honourable Horn and Honourable Swartz had raised. The functioning of the internal audit, by your own submission, is not up to scratch. And maybe that is why contract management and procurement is in the state that it is in. Could you tell us who you're outsourcing it to, and what remedial action are you taking? Because it's, I think, the source of the repeat findings. Now, you say it's been outsourced, and you say it has resulted in all these things that are there. What are you doing about it? First of all, who have you outsourced it to? And secondly, are you going to continue to outsource it to these people, or is there something that you're going to do to fix it up? Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I want to welcome the presentation, and also want to congratulate you, at least on that you concentrate mainly on the needs of the ordinary people than so-called high-profile cases. Secondly, I want to also congratulate you on the achievements, on your target, which is very, very good, especially in the increase in the outreach clinics that you have made. Keep it up. I just wanted to find out what, I understand that you have got budget constraints, and want to find out what does the Treasury say. It seems the allocation that is given is very, very small. You're given small amount and you're supposed to perform wonders. I think I want to find out, and I really we need to really talk we need to assist you in that, because if I understand very well that we said we don't, when you came, that we don't want you to take money from foreign governments because they may have some kind of influence and on your independence. What I want to find out is at least what is the Treasury saying, and how can we assist you in that direction. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, PP, and your team for the presentation. However, I would like to follow my colleagues in making some few comments. In terms of your outreach at clinics, PP, the target was 84 clinics per province by 31st March 2018, but apparently that was not achieved. And also a cause for concern in terms of financials, CFO. There are a lot of non-compliance, especially in relation to the PFMA, payment within 30 days, and so forth. And then the annual financial statements not prepared in terms of PFMA. That also is a very serious cause for concern. And then the deficit, which of course we are aware that is historical, but also the one of year under review of 1.4, subject to correction, is also a cause for concern. Especially that honorable members have raised it now and again as an integrity institution. You have to lead. You know, you remember during your when was it, 2016? We overemphasized that PP, that you are an integrity institution. You and your office, PPSA, and SIU should lead by example. But now, there are serious material misstatements in terms of your finances, the finances of the office of the public protector, being technically insolvent and all those related issues. And also a mismatch between the spending and performance. In some instances, 100% spending, but achievement, like in administration, being 43%, is a serious mismatch. So we'd like to have your comment on that. The issue of internal audit, honorable members have raised. Okay, you are.
2 minutes. Okay. Huh? I don't know.
Say 2 minutes.
No, I'm left
Oh, you
only
said
with
2
2
minutes to
minutes.
10.
Yes, yes. Honorable Breitenbach and Honorable Horn, the issue of the Deputy Public Protector, I think that matter was referred officially to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and to the Speaker. So in the meantime, we are working, and the DPP has the responsibilities, the delegations, especially the issue of training, which is a very strategic process in the organization. Since we don't have the resources, DPP will indicate what benefits of what he's doing, especially training on procurement law of our investigators. And I must say that we're still using some of the donor funds, because we never cancelled on that particular one of training, which I indicated they had to finish their term, and also training them on quality of our reports and making sure that we standardize our processes, but DPP can add. And then on issues of finances, deeply concerning, it's also very concerning for the institution. The deficit, it's a accumulated deficit. And I must still indicate that the irregular expenditure, still the 17, around, I think the CEO will end, but around the 17 million out of that is from the 2016 backwards. And then for my term, it's only around 1 million, and that is caused by the CFO, who was relieved of his duties because of the Falcon building, which he signed without following the proper processes. So I think that we can provide further details to that effect. And the issue of shunning foreign donations, indeed, that one, it's very clear that government, this is a constitutional institution, they should fund it properly. And at any rate, our biggest need is in our staff. Therefore, they wouldn't fund a compensation of employees. The only thing they were supporting is also on systems and on training. So the legal services I indicated, our legal costs, it's because of institutions which are supposed to be protecting the public protector in terms of Section 181. They are the ones who are taking us to court, especially on judicial review. And there are some cases which we need to defend because they have an impact on the mandate of the public protector. The CFO, which was released, Honorable Ohon, the matter was before court. So there was negotiations between the attorneys, and he requested that we settle the matter. The key issue was that whatever he was charged on might have led to possibly not a dismissal, but it might have also led to a suspension or not the that rigorous or that discipline. So when he wanted to be released and we had to enter into that particular settlement agreement, hence that cost. So the matter of the CEO, CEO's contract is still, he's still on a short-term contract until all the matters are resolved. And indeed, that matter is still before court, which might be resolved very soon. Then case management system, unfortunately, the prior costs around 12 or 15 million, which was lost. I don't know why the case was never opened against the officials who were implicated. And I indicated last time that state security was helping us to use the information which we have, and we see how we can create a system using the already existing process and flow which was already drafted. But the thing is, they also charge an amount which we don't have. CEO will add what negotiations we had to try and approach justice to help and other institutions, but we'll add on that. And then the repeat findings, again, unfortunately, it's as a result of the case management system, but again, that doesn't exonerate executive managers. Hence, that the executive manager concerned and the senior manager have been issued with OD letters to explain themselves. Hence, they need to indicate why they did that miscalculation. So, the fundamental disagreement, I'm not aware of that, but then what happened is that I called the AG after the meetings, and then I was also indicating to them, do not only communicate with the officials. If you need my intervention, even send me an email directly where you feel that my officials are not cooperating with you. So we had a very fruitful meeting. I even requested them to go and address the executive, CEO, and the provincial heads and the executive, and tell them about the implications of their conduct, trying to go through the process of maintaining the integrity of this institution. And always they are told, make sure that we lead by example. So the growth in the irregular expenditure, I've indicated what caused that, and we're trying our level best to deal with that. And the issue of consultants, we can give the breakdown to you on what does that entails. Is not using the consultants to do investigations. That we will never do. But then the consultants, we will indicate what consultants relates to. Honorable Maila, the compliance is a struggle for the organization. We do have an official, no capacity enough, but what do we do? That's where we come to you and say, can you help us? Because a minister, an HOD, you've issued a report, they don't take us on review, and taking us on review, Constitutional Court said, until the matter is set aside, that report is binding. They don't interdict us. Like the others who've interdicted, like the Premier of Western Cape. That is fine. You've interdicted, then the matter is before court. But you've taken the matter on review. It's just a delaying tactic. It impacts on the very same person. We don't have the resources to take that minister to court to enforce that. Why do we have to do that? I mean, this is between institutions of government who are relying on the same fiscus. So I think one of our rules, which we've published in the Government Gazette, is that we will refer them to the speaker so that the relevant portfolio committees, you deal with those ministers so that they can account, because the parliament is also responsible for making sure that they assist us in that particular aspect. The state of kept, in fact, the clean audit, definitely we're still working towards that. I'm glad that we have a very capable team now, which will try to work together, and again instilling in the executive managers that the issue of administration is not or the finances is not the responsibility of the CFO. Being an executive manager is also your responsibility to make sure that within your space or within your branch all is well. Commission of State on State Capture. Yes, there are matters which were referred to the commission. We handed all the evidence to the Judge, Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, and there were matters complaints which were lodged, relating to the terms of reference. I must indicate that the terms of reference, especially relating to the Gupta family, and including the terms of reference, the 1.4, which says any other family. Those matters we've referred to the commission. They have not yet, we agreed with Judge Zondo that we'll write to the complainant and inform them that we are referring it to the commission. So we've written to the complainants, and they need to make sure that they follow up with the commission secretary, Dr. Devier. We work very closely. If they need any information from us, it's sent through the Deputy Chief Justice with the Secretariat, Dr. Devier, to our office. But again, that's a concern, Honorable Member, that if we avail so much money for the Commission of Inquiry, and we have these institutions which are also there to be able to deal with issues of corruption, and according to the National Development Plan, we are supposed to be fully funded, but we can't be given that kind of money. The only liberators issue, the Vision 2023, we continuously implementing it, and now I said it's all the objectives in our strat plan for 19 addresses that. The visiting the provinces, engaging communities, educating them about their rights. But what I was doing this year was informing them that let government institutions establish internal complaints mechanisms. I mean, I attended the SARS 5-year launch of the annual of their plan. Around 3,500 complaints which were lodged with the SARS ombudsman. If it was not there, they would have been brought to the public protector. So that is a good progress. I mean, health ombudsman. Hence, I'm encouraging state institutions to establish those internal mechanisms so that when people come to lodge complaints, they listen to them, they resolve them, instead of people coming to the public protector. So people are now able to liberate themselves instead of also being waiting for the public protector to resolve their matters. So I think that as time goes on, we will be able to achieve it. Honorable Swart, the bill of costs, I don't know which one you're referring to, but then I thought we were waiting for the finalization of this matter. We haven't received anything as yet, as far as that for the judicial review. The unqualified audit, 15 million, CFO and CEO will indicate about that. How are we doing after receiving the additional amounts? And it's a concern indeed that the full compliance to PFMA and the principle of the matter of a going concern. The deviations, again, it's as a result of not having the senior officials within finance and supply chain. We've employed the senior manager, supply chain will help. There was a senior manager finance who was acting as a CFO going to Honorable Mutap. And again, unfortunately, she resigned end of July. And those lack of compliance of our financial statements and all that was as a result of the capacity of that person. Possibly she decided to then jump the ship, but we are investigating other related authorizations or approvals which she did, which also will cause problems for us. And I must indicate that other irregular expenditures which we are picking up this year, it's because some of them were never declared. So we're making sure that we are declaring all irregular expenditures. Honorable Smith agreed with you, and indeed it's the biggest challenge. CEO, can you just in short indicate which company is that? Is the company we found there? Their contract is expiring not long. Indeed, they are not up to scratch, and that's a challenge which I also had with the team. How do we find ourselves here when we have internal auditors, but we can't employ? Because I mean, if Treasury is cutting our baseline, those are the kind of officials, if we have an internal auditor, will pick up this. We are trying now internally to have our own control measures, but the process is slow, and with the kind of work we are having. Honorable Mpumlwane, Treasury, what we've asked and we've requested, at least what they can do, let them not then cut our baseline, because that's the worst. Currently, our goods and services, or our commitments are more than what we have on our goods and services. So we are accumulating deficit every month. Honorable Mutapo, the issue of clinics, there's a consequence management which is taken, is in the process of being taken. CAO is working on that, because it's not explainable why they couldn't achieve when other provinces could achieve. But you'll see in our current financial year, we've changed that structure. The clinic was never defined in the past, so we just took that. But now what we are doing is we're going to have clinics per district, so that in each district and each local municipality, so that we can have a bigger impact. These clinics, the way they were, was if you meet 5 people or 10 people, then it's a clinic as long as they've signed. But then we want a bigger impact, and we've reduced that to the district part. So the financial compliance, that's what I've indicated. This official has resigned, and because of all those lack of compliance, we're trying our level best to meet. And again, I agree with the issue of being an institution of integrity. We should be leading by example. I'll hand over to DPP just to, in short, and therefore after.
Okay, thank you, PP. Maybe the DPP also touched on, you made mention of short-term contract. How short is the short-term contract? And also the issue of number of cases older than 5 years. Thank you.
Honorable Mutap, the short-term contract. Or CO will indicate, or the CO post. Yes, remember we had a 3 months contract, so now we've extended it until May for a year, so that we can resolve all these issues, and to make sure as well that we have stability, but they will be resolved soon in that. The 5-year-old, we have a project. DPP is running that project within the institution, of making sure that we deal with the matters old, but he can just.
Okay, thank you, honorable members, Chair, honorable members. I just want to clarify the delegation of my powers and functions currently, as was asked by Advocate Breitenbach. Currently, I have the following delegations. 1, to oversee the backlog project of complaints which are 2 years and older, from the good governance, integrity, and administrative justice and provincial investigations. So in other words, all cases which are more than 2 years. I'm running a project that is dealing with that. Of course, it's a very involved process, because it actually emanates from the actual work of the different branches in the different provinces. And then to chair all task team meetings which deal with think tank files. Task team really is a system that we have to monitor the speed with which investigations are moving and closing. And then, of course, to quality check all draft reports and Section 7.9 notices. So Section 7.9 notices are in terms of Section 7.9 of the Public Protector Act, where we give so-called implicated parties a last opportunity to respond to proposed remedial action. And then, of course, the training issue is actually on that report writing and the notices around the country. And of course, there's another one which I initiated in partnership with the University of Stellenbosch concerning public procurement law. As you can see, departments, in fact, the state generally gets into a lot of trouble in terms of procurement investigations, but they're very complex and so forth. So I'm running a project where the Faculty of Law is actually, what's known as the African Public Procurement Law Unit, is training our investigators on how to identify challenges and gaps in public procurement. So that's currently where we are. And then, of course, I just want to clarify, I mean, look, you know, security clearance. See, I'm a naturalized citizen, and that's not unlawful in this country. It's a fairly valid way to acquire one's citizenship. You know, you are not a criminal, because there's been a lot of lazy journalism in the way this is written about. And so, but naturalized citizens can only get top secret clearance after 20 years, right? So that's fine, you know, there's no problem with that. So, but the issue, what I've had, obviously had serious concerns about, is how there's been so much lazy interpretation around this, in the sense that as if you are a criminal or something like that. There's nothing wrong. It's the law. Within the law, you can vote, you can run for public office. Yes. So that's the point I'm making, that I think the work is continuing. And as I'm saying, I've led probably thousands of investigative processes, and you know, my term expires in December next year. So as far as I'm concerned, the ship has bolted. I mean, the horse has bolted. You know, the ship has sailed. So the issue is really about how do we finalize this term, and you know, the work has been done, and so forth. And at this stage, it's really about assisting the institution to get to the next level during the remainder of my term.
Thanks, Chair. The issue around the outstanding or the long outstanding cases that you say you have a project or you've been given the task to address. If we look at the annual report, your opening balance, for want of a better word, opening number of cases is about 5,000. Your closing number of cases is also close to 5,000, or just under 4,500. So it seems to me that we are dealing with the current, for want of a better word. And all you said to us is that you've got a project. It might be more helpful for this committee if you indicated, or if you elaborated on it. If I'm covering grounds that has been covered, Chairperson, please forgive me, but it would be better if you said to us, these are the people that are going to do it, these are the interventions, so that as Parliament, we are able to add our voice to say those interventions are not going to cover it, because unless there's something different that's going to happen, I'm not sure how in the period that you've got left in your contract, as you indicate, you would cover that. So if you could just elaborate on what exactly are you doing to deal with the backlog, and if the caseload per member is so high, you're unable to employ people, what are we saying? Are we saying that this is going to be a perennial problem? Are we going to give people more cases to handle as an individual? How exactly are we going to deal with this backlog?
Yeah, thank you. I have a follow-up in respect of the senior management level. And in asking these questions, I think the proper context, Acting Chair, is this. It is quite clear also from the answers today that there seems to be not a lot of harmony and peace within senior management level at the office since the Public Protector took office. On the one hand, one gets the impression that, as she puts it, consequence management is taking its toll, and therefore of that one must be appreciative, because that's, as I said previously, what we're calling for. On the other hand, one must then also question as to how the office go about to appoint competent staff. Because unfortunately, as we see from the annual report and specifically the AG findings, it has a definite impact, the instability at senior management level. But the specific question I want to ask is also in respect of the chief of staff position, where I think the historical context is that towards the end of 2016, the chief of staff that came with the office appointed by the predecessor was according to newspaper reports in any event, sort of accompanied from the premises due to security concerns. It is a senior position also which must act as a type of a safety net for the public protector, in the sense that it is this person who has to also, apart from the internal audit committee, warn about risks and dangers in terms of performance management, for example. And then we have what is on record, the developments of an attempted appointment in June this year. And then later on it transpired that the appointment was not finalized or was withdrawn on the basis that some qualification or proof of qualification needed to be filed. And then what we had is that this person was going to be acting until the certificate was produced. So if we can be appraised as to whether that proof of qualification has arrived, whether the appointment has been finalized, and if not, I think and there's still the same person in an acting position, I think the question must be asked why this time around there's made special exceptions to what the law really demands. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malunga, please don't misunderstand my question about your security clearance as an attack on you. It certainly wasn't. It was more to highlight the anomaly of the fact that you've been doing the job for some time, you're going to continue to do the job for some time, and yet you were effectively, in my view, sidelined for no reason. Do I understand you correctly when you say that part of your training is to train people to write reports? Which people are those? Are they professional staff? Are they investigators? If you could just help me with that, because I must say that I think a person who holds the position as you do can be much more optimally used than teaching people who have legal qualifications to write reports. One would assume that they were capable of writing reports, and if they aren't, then one should worry about the quality of staff that's being appointed. I can't imagine that the Deputy Public Protector can while away his time teaching lawyers to write reports. Thank you.
Chair, Public Protector, just as a matter of clarity on the issue of the costs, the bill of costs, and that is referred to on page 102 of the notes to the annual financial statements, and maybe the CFO will refer to that, note 20, and it's not dealing with the personal cost order, which is subject to appeal to the Constitutional Court, but it indicates that the costs order that was granted under contingent liabilities, and there, in terms of your financial statements, you indicate we have not yet received the bill of costs in this matter, and that is the Reserve Bank versus Public Protector, and we are unable to estimate the legal costs payable. Then, as well, with the ABSA Bank versus the Public Protector, where where there was a punitive costs order of attorney and client scale, including the costs of 3 counsel. Please note we have not received the bill of costs from either ABSA or the Reserve Bank, and therefore we are unable to estimate the legal costs payable. That is at this stage, and so that is a concern, but maybe by this time those costs have been obtained in the next financial year, and if so, can you give us an indication of what the amounts are involved? And just, Mr. Malunga, yes, indeed, the security clearance, it is a matter of concern because you did all the work with the previous public protector, the issue was never relevant. But is it your opinion that you're being maximally optimized, being used at this stage as Deputy Public Protector? Or has this become an issue that has resulted you, as my other colleagues have indicated, that you're purely training people, considering that this was never an issue under the previous public protector? I'm not casting any aspersions to her, but I'm just saying this issue of the security clearance that came up during the interviews, if I remember correctly. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Yes, I think maybe before the DPP can include the comment on the issue of the 2-year and older matters, I must indicate, Chairperson, acting Chairperson, on the issue of the security clearance of Advocate Malunga. And I think what Advocate Swartz Honorable Swartz is asking. I wrote to the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. I indicated that in my term, these are the concerns I have as far as the laws of the country, the Constitution, which establishes the State Security Agency, the National Intelligence Strategic Act, and whether as a committee and myself must we violate that, especially on the fact that is there work which needs to be done by Advocate Malunga when he doesn't have the security clearance. So in my term, hence it changed because I wanted to make sure that I'm not violating the laws of the country. That's the first one. So after our deliberations last year, March, in fact this year, March the 6th, I then went back and say, Advocate Malunga, in addition to the training, which he'll also, I thought he'll be detailing the training, what you're training them as a law lecture, a previous law lecture, training them on. Then can you make sure that these cases, because they were there in your term with the former public protector, oversee them, that we deal with them. So the 2-year-old cases is not those 5,000 and 4,000, but that yes, they are included there. The number we can provide the committee is much lesser. It's not even more than 500, where it's older cases. The numbers we have here are your bread and butter issues. Yes, it's 2 years. In fact, it's the term, it's from 2016, before I joined, backwards. Yes, we will do that in writing and show the numbers and what cases are those. And then on the systems we've put in place, that's where then the DPP will elaborate more. We have the task team, which I was chairing every week. I've delegated that to him to chair, and then where they present the status of how far are they in finalizing those matters. And then the issue of the senior management, no harmony, maybe the no harmony, Honorable Swan, is that, in fact, I also have a name that I'm consequence management within the institution. Because to me, you need to do your work, we are paying, it's taxpayers' money. So if there's that allegations of no harmony, possibly it's based on that, but everyone is committed. Executive managers, that's where I also tell them, you cannot take the responsibility of your junior. We are paying senior investigators a lot of money, they are trained, they need to do their work. So again, I agree with you. I think our process of appointing staff should be rigorous so that we get people and we don't have people who don't even understand the PFMA, but they are admitted CAs. So I think that is a long way to go. So, and on the issue of the chief of staff, it's as if you are aware that the CEO is busy dealing with that matter. The chief of staff has, in fact, he was acting, and then he has also submitted his resignation letter, and we'll be advertising the post and the one for Chief Operations Officer, because those are the key, and they will make sure that we don't have this manual, unnecessary maladministration within the institution. And the issue of the staff training, I think DPP, can you clarify what you do about the training, especially on quality assurance, the application of the law, how we draft our reports so that they can stand a test of court processing. Then I'll allow the CEO and CFO to comment on the Honorable Swart's question of costs.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and honorable members. I'll start with the question from Honorable Smith, which deals with the backlog project. As has been highlighted, the way in which this has been monitored so far, and I'm not totally satisfied with our progress, I must admit, is that fortnightly we have what is known as a task team, and as one of the items in that task team meeting is that the 3 different branches, that is good governance and integrity, provincial investigations, administrative justice and service delivery, will make a presentation, that is the executive managers, on their backlogs in terms of numbers, in terms of actual cases and of course, my instruction to them when this delegation was made to me was that we need to cull as much of these matters that have either become irrelevant or redundant, and try and ensure that we focus on those matters that will enhance the mandate of the institution. But as I said, I'm quite frustrated currently because the numbers are not moving the way we would like them to do. But it's actually, that's how I do it every 2 weeks, basically, where we actually monitor the different. So it's more of an oversight role on my part because I can't exactly. Sometimes I'll go through the Excel presentation and tick off things that I think should be removed, but it's a work in progress. Honorable Breitenbach, the people I'm training are the investigators. So I've done 8 out of 9 provinces. 8 out, yes. Yes. Honorable Swart, last one is until the new delegations, yes, there was a problem. Until the 17th of April, in the sense that I certainly, yeah, you are absolutely spot on that it was not correct for someone at my level to be doing that. But with these delegations, I think we are working. So, and as I said, I think yeah, that's it. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, PP. Chair, the members, there's always a principle that if you are a new incumbent, you don't always have to blame your predecessor. But the reality in the organization is that administrative-wise, I think there was a lot of complacency from what we have inherited since we work with I work with the public protector. But I always try to shy away from that and concentrate on the job at hand. It's all evident in the irregular expenditure that has been presented by the CFO, especially the repeat. The problem is that as much as members will say, but you identify this, but you couldn't correct it, it's a repeat. It's because, for instance, if a contract is running for 3 years and it was done in 2016, there's nothing we can do up until that contract expires. So it will keep on coming into your books and all the stuff. But just to go to specific questions that were asked by the members, especially the issue of insolvency, we technically insolvent, but knowing in South Africa that we deal with the MTF's periods of budgeting. So there's always that assurance from the state that there will be monies because of your baseline. So as long as we have a baseline reflected, that will be funded going forward. So that element of insolvency that go away. But it's not an ideal situation because it makes operations difficult, because from time to time, we have to make sure that you come up with austerity measures. We have to make sure that you minimize your deficit so that at least you stay within your baseline and all the stuff. And it compromises some of the core business that you need to do. Then, hence, yes, yeah, we're asking the members to support us in the National Treasury request for additional funding just to sustain our baseline. Then there was also a question around the role of the internal audit. Again, it's a clear indication of what was happening in the past, whereby you have these external people coming to assist the organization in terms of internal audit. Yes, we agree that there's no sufficient budget to have internal capacity, but also the management of those people was a problem. Also coupled to that was the fact that even the audit committee in the previous years was not sitting regularly. So it was difficult to manage those people. At the end of the financial year that we're coming from, it was evident how they are not effective, whereby I had to work directly with the CFO. Though, yes, it's my responsibility, but we will pick up things as we go along and we keep on calling them. But did you assisted the CFO, the acting CFO, to verify this information, why this is like this, why that is like this, up until the last hour? Then what auditors do, they monitor how you do your books and all the stuff, and then they make an opinion because they can observe that there are problems there and there, which may not be created by management, but other people that are supposed to support the management. The name of the company is Ngubane and Associates. The contract is ending in February, but we cannot go to... Yes, and Associates. Their contract is ending next year. Yes, it's a CA company. So, but we still have an audit plan that we are working with them. We are respecting the contract, but the good thing is that we also have a new audit committee now, which is also assisting us to monitor them and to ensure that they are bringing their best into the organization for the remaining part of their contract. Material statement, yes, the AG raised this concern. Capacity became a reality again, where I've explained to this to say there was a senior manager who was not there, and also the supporting manager who's not there. So basically, the acting CFO was working with juniors at that time, but also there were also problem of ill health and all the stuff at some stage. Last minutes of the financial year, she couldn't be there. Again, the CEO had to chip in and carry the team in the finance division to ensure that we comply with the financial statements. Hence, we did at the end, even though there's an opinion. The MTF requests, I think that I've said it. We put our bid, like we are mindful of the financial situation in the country. We know everyone is looking for the money. However, we are saying it's so difficult to carry the mandate of this organization, especially we need the support of the members in this one. I'll leave the rest to the CFO.
Okay, thanks, CEO and Chairperson. In relation to the contingent liability that we have disclosed and indicated to say the bill of cost is not yet confirmed, it is still not confirmed even at this stage. But if I may go further in terms of there was a question in relating to the consultants. The consultant costs include the internal audit firm that is currently rendering the internal audit function, as well as legal fees, which the PP has alluded to earlier to indicate to say there are cases which from time to time we have to defend in court after the report and the remedial action would have been issued by PPSA. I also want to add in terms of irregular expenditure. The irregular expenditure that is reported in our annual report or the audit report, it is what we have disclosed as PPSA, not necessarily a finding by the Auditor General. However, the Auditor General raised concerns to say there were no steps to prevent the irregular expenditure by PPSA. However, as the public protector indicated earlier on to say, about 18 million of that are contracts that were signed off 16-17 financial year and prior, and those contracts, because legally they are binding, they are still existing. However, with the consequence management that is currently underway, we are hoping that National Treasury will consider to condone those contracts once we have provided evidence that consequence management has been taken against officials that are affected. And then in terms of the clean audit strategy, we have developed a clean audit strategy which was approved just before the end of September. We also have an in-house governance structure called Audit Steering Committee that meets on a monthly basis to monitor the implementation of the action plan which we have developed after the findings which were raised by Auditor General. I think, yeah, that is all. Thanks.
Sorry,
Just my question on the Governance Advisory Board was not answered, whether
Oh, that, yes, that one was disbanded, I think 2017 early, or, yes, because the members were never available to continue.
yeah, may I continue? Sorry, no, Madam Acting Chair, thanks. Okay, yeah, sorry, the answer to my follow-up on the Chief of Staff just begs another question. The person I referred to, and I'm sorry to identify by name, is Ms. Linda Molelekwa. And then in your answer, you referred to a he who has now resigned or offered a resignation. So was there, then after her, having not been able to appoint another acting Chief of Staff, and do I understand you correctly to say that going forward you will now rather appoint a Chief of Operations? And then finally, maybe just a comment, and I'm really saying this not to be disrespectful, but I think the Public Protector must take away from this meeting the honest advice that it will not, things will not improve if we meet by this time next year, if the situation in respect of senior management keep on resembling a revolving door there at the entrance to our office. Because just in the answer to my follow-up question, we've learned of yet another person, senior official, who has offered a resignation. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Honorable Mutapu. Honorable Horn, I agree with you on the issue of senior management, who should be performing their duties, and indeed we should be getting quality people, maintaining the integrity. And if people resign because they cannot possibly maintain the standard we are having, then we'll have to continue getting the proper people. But then on the issue of the Chief of Staff, the one who left, I was not referring to Mr. Dlamini, the one who was brought by the former PP, where I indicated indeed that is a position which is very close to the PP, and you need somebody who you can work with. Ms. Molelekwa was acting Chief of Staff, and she's the one who offered. In fact, the CEO has already started the process of making sure that we are compliant to our human resource and labor related issues. Hence, there were preparations and internal memos as if you could sense that we are in the process of advertising the Chief of Staff and the COO position, those strategic positions. So I might have said he instead of she. Unfortunately, it's not my first language, so mhlambe mangakhuluma isiZulu singazwana. Ngiyabonga.
Other issues which we requested you to respond in writing, we'll make a formal letter, then you'll then respond maybe within 7 days of receipt of that letter where we shall be requesting your office to respond in writing on other critical issues. And then thank you so much for the presentation. And we are done with the Office of Public Protector. Thank you, honorable members. We'll now continue with the South African Human Rights Commission. And honorable member, we have a slight challenge. This venue is booked from 12 o'clock for memorial service. Then at 11:45, we'll move to M201. Yeah. M201, that's at where is it? Max Building. And then can we take 5 minutes break for? Yes.
No, we can check when we're there.
If it's available, I'm gonna go there now. Then you do CRC first.